It's nighttime, and little Leo sits on the edge of his cozy bed, the soft glow of the night wrapping around his room. Even though the day had come and gone, his sheets and blankets still looked perfectly tidy, just as he'd left them that morning. Spread neatly on top was his favorite comforter, a bright and colorful one, patterned with dragons, swirling spells, and robed magicians that seemed to dance if you stared long enough. In his hands, Leo held his most treasured possession, a plush baby dragon he'd received for his birthday. He admired it the way one might gaze at a secret treasure, his eyes tracing the shimmering blend of green and blue scales that covered its body. For a moment, Leo could have sworn the colors were shifting, rippling like light on water. He blinked and leaned closer, unsure if it was his imagination or something more. The dragon toy looked adorably animated, like a character from his favorite fantasy cartoon, with big, round eyes that seemed too large for its tiny frame, and a goofy, toothless grin that never failed to make Leo smile back. He had named it Henry, and somehow that name just felt right. Henry wasn't just a toy. He was a friend, a piece of magic that made Leo's room feel alive. Just as he did every night before drifting off to sleep, Leo wrapped Henry in a warm, gentle hug. But tonight, something felt different. The air in the room shifted, charged with an energy Leo couldn't quite name. A soft glow spilled through his window, even though moments ago the night outside had been pitch black. Then, with a sudden whoosh, a golden gust of wind swept in, flinging the window wide open. A radiant light poured inside, flooding every corner of the room with warmth and brilliance. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He knew this wasn't ordinary. The light danced playfully across the walls and floor, forming patterns that seemed almost alive. Mesmerized, Leo let his eyes drift shut. The gentle breeze tousled his hair, and he smiled, feeling calm and weightless, bathed in a glow that felt both strange and familiar. And then, as the peacefulness deepened, he sensed something new, a soft, comforting weight settling right across his lap. Leo blinked in disbelief as he opened his eyes, and what he saw made his heart race. Right there on his lap, the plush dragon was no longer just a toy. Henry was alive. His wide, glimmering green eyes blinked up at Leo, filled with curiosity and a playful sparkle that made him seem both mischievous and kind. For a split second, Leo froze, too stunned to move. Then, with a startled gasp, he nearly dropped the little dragon. Henry let out a tiny squeak of surprise, followed by a faint puff of silvery smoke that curled up into the air. "Henry," Leo whispered, barely daring to believe what he was seeing. At the sound of his name, the baby dragon's face lit up with that same goofy, toothless grin Leo loved so much. Henry gave an eager nod, as if to proudly say, asterisk, yes, it's really me. Asterisk. Then, with a rustle that sent shivers of wonder through Leo, Henry slowly unfurled his wings. They shimmered in the glowing light scales of emerald green and sapphire blue that glinted like 1,000 tiny jewels. Another soft puff of smoke escaped Henry's snout as he leaned forward, wrapping his small wings gently around Leo in a warm, affectionate hug. Leo felt his heart swell. It was like being embraced by magic itself. Then the air around them began to stir. The wind picked up, swirling in circles, faster and faster until it surrounded them completely. Leo clutched Henry tightly, feeling weightless, As the two were lifted from the bed, spinning through a tunnel of light and color, the world seemed to melt, our time and space blending into a single, dreamlike current. When the motion finally slowed, Leo felt solid ground beneath his feet again. He opened his eyes and gasped. His bedroom was gone. They were standing in an entirely different world, a place painted in vivid colors and sunlight. Rolling hills stretched out in every direction, blanketed in wildflowers and soft green grass. The sky above them was bright and endless, with clouds drifting lazily like feathers. Leo rubbed his eyes and even pinched his arm just to be sure this wasn't some vivid dream. But the warmth of the sun and the scent of fresh air told him it was real. Henry, looking quite pleased with himself, gave Leo a gentle nudge before flapping his wings wide and soaring effortlessly into the blue, leaving Leo standing atop a hill that overlooked a breathtaking valley below. All around them stretched a breathtaking panorama of emerald, whispering rainforests and towering mountains that reached out to meet the horizon. The sight was so vivid, so alive, that Leo could hardly believe it was real. It felt better than any vacation he'd ever been on, better than any video game he'd played, or any dream he'd ever imagined. Above him, Henry soared joyfully through the boundless blue sky, spinning and gliding in wide, graceful arcs. The baby dragon's delight was infectious. Watching him twirl against the sunlight was like watching a living rainbow take flight. Leo couldn't help but smile, his heart full of wonder. He had always loved stories of magic and adventure tales, of knights, sorcerers, and dragons, but nothing he'd ever read or seen compared to this. Here was a dragon, his dragon, performing a dazzling aerial show that no circus act or fantasy movie could ever hope to match. Leo stood rooted to the spot, his eyes wide with amazement, letting the moment wash over him. Around him stretched a paradise of color and life. A radiant rainbow curved across the robin's egg blue sky, while sunlight danced across Henry's shimmering scales, making them sparkle like gemstones. Everywhere Leo looked, nature was alive with brilliance. That trees, plants, and grass were so green they almost glowed, and the mountains towered proudly over the sprawling valley below. The wind carried the sweet scent of flowers and rustled through the trees, setting the leaves swaying like rippling waves. High above, flocks of birds painted the sky with motion and color. Tiny, bright-winged creatures darting between tufts of white cloud that drifted lazily overhead. The sunlight and shadows from the clouds played across the hills, leaving moving patches of light like soft footprints on the land. Then something caught Leo's attention, a glimmer of emerald light flashing in the corner of his vision. He turned quickly, just in time to see Henry swooping back toward him. The dragon's wings caught the wind with a low hum, gliding effortlessly through the air. His wingspan was far broader than Leo remembered, making Henry seem grander, almost majestic. With a gentle swoosh, Henry landed gracefully nearby, folding his wings as he bounded toward Leo. The dragon nudged him softly, a warm, affectionate gesture that made Leo laugh. Then, with a twinkle in his eye, Henry slowly unfurled his wings, once more revealing something small and mysterious tucked safely within their glittering folds. With careful precision, Henry extended one of his tiny talons and gently plucked something from between his glittering wings. He leaned forward, offering it to Leo with surprising grace. Curious, Leo sat down on the soft grass and reached out to accept the gift. As soon as his fingers closed around it, his eyes widened in astonishment. It was a bouquet, exquisite bundle of flowers that shimmered with every color imaginable. Each petal seemed to hold its own rainbow, glowing softly in the sunlight. Hues of blue, green, pink, violet, gold, and tangerine blended together in perfect harmony, their tones shifting like living light. Some colors were so unique that Leo was certain he'd never seen them before, not in any garden, not even in his wildest dreams. He turned the bouquet slowly in his hands, marveling at the contrast between the delicate petals and the sturdy green stems that bound them together. The blossoms swayed gently in the breeze, almost as if they were breathing. A sweet, soothing fragrance drifted up to meet him, soft notes of rose, lilac, and something wonderfully unfamiliar that made him close his eyes and inhale deeply. Leo had never imagined that holding flowers could make him feel so happy, so completely enchanted. But these were no ordinary blooms, they were magical, a gift from his dragon friend. He looked up at Henry, his chest full of warmth and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, smiling deeply. Henry puffed up proudly at the gesture, his scales glinting like polished gems, as if he understood perfectly. Pleased by Leo's joy, the dragon gave a satisfied flick of his tail. Remembering something, Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of twine he'd found earlier that day. Carefully, he wound it around the stems, tying them neatly into a bundle. He then placed the bouquet upright against a nearby tree stump where the sunlight could kiss the petals, making them glow even brighter. Finally, Leo reached out and scratched Henry's head. The dragon's scales felt smooth and cool beneath his fingertips, like polished stone. Henry closed his eyes and let out a low, contented rumble sound that told Leo everything he needed to know about their friendship. Leo couldn't help but marvel once more at the sight of the magnificent creature before him and the incredible gift he'd just been given. Everything about Henry felt magical, as if he had stepped straight out of one of Leo's favorite storybooks. As the excitement of the moment faded into calm, Henry slowly relaxed. His wings drooped gently to his sides, folding neatly against his body. His breathing grew steady, rhythmic, and soon the baby dragon drifted off to sleep. A soft, almost musical snore escaped his snout now and then, and tiny curls of smoke puffed lazily into the air. Leo sat quietly beside him, not wanting to disturb the slumbering dragon. He studied every detail under his glittering wings that shimmered even in the shade. The elegant, whip-like tail that ended in a sharp, triangular tip, and the faint rise and fall of his small chest as he dreamed. Leo felt a deep warmth in his heart. This wasn't just a fantasy anymore, was real, alive, and right here beside him. After a few moments, Leo's gaze wandered past his new friend. He looked up toward the canopy of trees, their emerald leaves swaying gently in the mountain breeze. The forest stretched endlessly around him, weaving up and down the slopes that hugged the valley. Strange vines looped and curled around the trees, their blossoms bursting with colors brighter than anything Leo had ever seen. Everything shimmered, every leaf, every petal, every ray of light filtering through the branches. It was the dreamiest, most enchanting place he could possibly imagine. Before long, Henry began to stir. The dragon let out a small sigh, then stretched his wings wide with a soft rustle. He yawned deeply, and a thin wisp of silvery smoke drifted from his nostrils as he blinked himself awake. When his bright green eyes met Leo's, Henry tilted his head slightly, as though he'd just heard something. Following the dragon's gaze, Leo turned toward a nearby hill, but he couldn't see or hear anything unusual. Still, curiosity tugged at him. Without hesitation, he started walking in that direction. Henry gave a quick flick of his tail, then took off into the sky, circling above Leo to lead the way. By the time Leo reached the crest of the hill, his breath caught in his throat. The view that opened before him was nothing short of spectacular. Below, a crystal-clear river wound lazily through the valley, glinting in the sunlight like a ribbon of glass. On both sides of the water stretched a sea of deep green foliage, rolling hills and distant mountains that seemed to cradle the valley in their arms. Fluffy white clouds drifted across the sky, casting soft shadows that rippled across the landscape. Then, as Leo's eyes traveled further, he gasped that across the valley stood a mountain unlike any other. From its peak poured a colossal waterfall, tumbling down in a shining cascade that sparkled like liquid diamonds. It thundered majestically all the way from the mountaintop to a crystal pool at its base, sending a misty veil into the air. The sight was so breathtaking that Leo could only stand there in awe, completely lost in its beauty. Leo stared at the magnificent waterfall in complete awe. His tiny dragon, Henry, landed lightly on his shoulder. Together, they gazed across the lush green valley toward the glistening cascade, a picture-perfect moment. Leo took a mental photograph, sealing the image in his memory. They walked down a path winding through ancient trees, and a blue and purple butterfly even perched on Leo's hand. Finally, they arrived at the water's edge, where cool mist sprayed around them. Leo closed his eyes, laughing softly as he felt the sun on his cheeks and the mist on his skin. Above him, Henry swooped playfully, darting straight into the waterfall's silvery curtain before bursting back out with a joyful squeal. Watching him play made Leo's heart feel light. Together, boy and dragon stood side by side, ready to explore the wonder that waited there. When Leo finally reached the edge of the shimmering pool, he knelt down and dipped his hands into the crystal-clear water. The liquid was cool and smooth as it slipped between his fingers. He cupped his palms together, lifted them carefully, and took a refreshing sip. The taste was pure and sweet like the cleanest water he had ever known. All around the pool's edge, clusters of beautiful, rainbow-hued flowers swayed gently in the breeze. They were the very same blossoms Henry had gifted him at the beginning of their adventure. Only now they grew taller, their petals glowing as though touched by starlight. Their colors shimmered in the sunlight, brilliant shades of blue, pink, gold, and violet that seemed even more vivid than before. As Leo admired the blooms, something else caught his eye. Beneath the glassy surface of the pool, schools of fish glided lazily between the shafts of sunlight. Each one was different, small and shimmering like silver coins, others bright as jewels. Splashes of red, orange, and rose pink flickered beneath the ripples, creating a living rainbow in the water. It was a scene so peaceful, so alive, that Leo wished he could stay there forever. But deep down he knew the moment wouldn't last. Henry seemed to sense it, too. With a gentle flutter of wings, the dragon swooped down beside him, landing softly on the grass. He gave Leo a knowing look, full of warmth and understanding, before wrapping him up in a loving embrace. His glittering wings folded around the boy like a cocoon of light and color. Almost instantly, Leo felt the air begin to stir again, the same familiar swirl of wind and magic that had carried them here before. A radiant light enveloped them, bright and soft, all at once. Leo closed his eyes as the ground seemed to fade away beneath his feet, and he felt himself being lifted, floating weightlessly through the glow. When the light dimmed and he opened his eyes again, Leo was home. His room looked exactly as it had before: quiet, warm, and safe. He was sitting on his bed, his arms wrapped tightly around his plush dragon. A gentle smile spread across his face as he looked down at Henry's stitched grin. His heart swelled with happiness and wonder. He knew, without a doubt, that what he had experienced was real somehow, in some magical way. Feeling content and sleepy, Leo pulled back his colorful comforter and climbed beneath it, still holding Henry close against his chest. His eyelids grew heavy, his breathing slow and calm. The adventure had filled him with joy so deep it felt like a dream he could carry forever. With one last squeeze, Leo whispered a soft goodnight, then closed his eyes. Within moments, he drifted into a peaceful sleep, his little dragon nestled safely by his side, both of them wrapped in the quiet magic of the night.